Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Sally Fletcher, Head of Online Events at SSON. I'm delighted to be hosting this session today. So the title of today's webinar is How to Strengthen Your Talent Pool in a Shrinking Labour Market. So we know at SSON that talent management is always going to be one of the biggest topics for our community. And in fact, in SSON's most recent State of the Industry survey, upskilling shared services staff was listed as the #1 priority for 2024. And that's overtaking last year's winner, which was leveraging automation platforms. So it really is all about people. We're going to be looking today at assessing your current talent for untapped and underutilized skills, eliminating bias against older workers and accessing the skills and wisdom experienced workers have to offer, developing a robust reskilling program, predicting future talent needs, and creating a plan to track your progress and ensuring the next generation of leaders is ready. So before I kind of kickstart with our questions, I'll just put kind of a quick poll on for, that's the answers. Hopefully this should pop up for you. So please do have a look and let us know what your biggest talent challenge is, because that will help us create content and help you solve that challenge. So do go ahead and mark that. Just a few notices on the console you see before you. So of course you've got us on the left, and on the right hand side you have the attendee chat and the resource center. Our speakers are here live, so really do make the most of that and put in your questions. We've got some time reserved at the end for those. So it'd be great to kind of see, as I said, what challenges you're facing, what you're thinking, how we can collaborate together within the HR community. And in the bottom right is your resource center. This has additional resources related to the session. In here, I've got the Eightfold AI resource management report, also Beyond the Resume, Building a Workforce with a Skills-Based Approach. That's a really, really interesting article, and a report on responsible AI, which is, of course, absolutely crucial. You've also got the question marks. If you have any technical problems during the session, the answer will likely be in there. And last but not least, you have a kind of head and shoulders icon at the bottom. This tells you a little bit more about our speakers, and you can connect with them on LinkedIn. But I am going to quickly introduce them now. So first up, Connor Volpe is a Director for Product Marketing at Eightfold AI. Connor is, as I said, Director of Product Marketing for Eightfold's AI talent acquisition product, which helps companies hire high potential and diverse talent faster than ever before. Prior to Eightfold, Connor worked at Salesforce in product marketing with a focus on global strategic launches for Slack, Safety Cloud, and Service Cloud. And he's joined today by Nadia Hutchinson, the Global Director for HR Operations at Cabo Corporation. Nadia is an international HR leader with wide experience in transformation, change management, shared services, and M&A. She joined Cabo's HRLT in 2021 to lead the organization through a global HR transformation program to embed SaaS technologies and transform the HR and payroll operating model across the group. And she also has fantastic experience at Kantar and British American Tobacco, where she was part of their HR transformation teams. So two very, very well qualified panelists joining us today. Welcome to the panel, guys. Very nice. So I'm going to kickstart with our first question and find out from you guys. So Connor, to open the session, I'd love to know what skills are shared services currently looking for and where is the shortage? What's your feeling on that?
The easy answer is it depends. And what I mean by that is it depends what the business's priorities are, right? So like we have some customers out there undergoing very different types of transformations. Some of those are moving from a traditional maybe oil and gas model to renewable energies. Some are focused on a digital transformation. Others focused on up-leveling their customer experience. All of those are transformations for a reason. It's because they're hard to do. These skills are hard to come by. So it largely depends on what is the business's initiatives, and therefore oftentimes those skills maybe aren't in large supply inside their four walls. But to maybe be a touch more specific, what we've seen is the skills that are especially hard to come by are the ones that are the emerging technical skills. And in fact, we tend to see that those have a half-life. In other words, their relevance is like about 2.5 years. So these skills, they come and they burn really hot. And then 2.5 years later, something else tends to supersede them. But for those moments, they're really important. So generally it depends, but for the most part, we see those emerging technical skills being the ones that are in really high demand.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've definitely heard that on our side too. And Nadia, do you agree with that? Is there anything additional that you think is hard to come by and really in demand?
Um, I think I would add to that, but my comment is going to be a twist, right? So typically, organizations believe that the staff within our teams are entry career type individuals. And that means that they don't necessarily have extensive experience in things like negotiation, vendor management, um, challenging people. Do they really understand compliance? Do they know legislation from the point of view of the corporate requirements? So for me, it's more about finding the people who have the attitude and aptitude to learn fast in those areas. Unless I can find people who second job, third job, who already bring that, but it's somewhat unusual. So for me, it's skills and aptitude um, are the main things that I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And it's not an easy one to assess, I think, in there, especially in the initial recruitment process. Let's have a look at our first poll because our audience responded. And I mean, of course, it's nice to see because you joined this webinar that 37%, the highest kind of marker, said that finding people with the right skills is their biggest challenge. We also had 18% were saying attrition is a big challenge, 18% upskilling existing staff, 18% improving employee engagement. And then some people marked other. And if you do have other challenges that you're facing, please do pop it in the attendee chat. We'd love to know, what are your challenges and how can we help? Does that reflect kind of what you see in the market in terms of people like having real trouble upskilling existing staff and finding the right skills?
I mean, absolutely. It's as I mentioned, sometimes when we need a particular skill or skill set, there is nothing else that hurts as much as when we can't find it. So I think, frankly, what Nadia was getting at, we're finding people with the aptitude to maybe come in with some of these skills or be a fast learner to get these skills becomes therefore really important. When there is a shortage in the market for something that we need specifically, the next step is, well, who can we find who can learn this? Who can we find who we can grow into that role or into the skill that we need? So yeah, it's always top of mind, finding the right skills to meet our clients' demands, to meet our own business needs.
Yeah, totally. So let's move on to upskilling. And I want to make sure that, our webinar is as practical as possible and all of our attendees go away taking something and that can implement in their own organization. So what I want to ask is, upskilling is clearly a core part of strengthening, can't speak today, strengthening your talent pool. But what are the most effective ways to go about this? Nadia, let's start with you. What would you say?
I think it's on the job shadowing, mentoring. There's nothing like real, true day-to-day experience. And that should be supplemented with whichever kind of courses, theoretical learning, seminars like this, webinars, those kind of things that are available, LinkedIn learning sessions. But the reality is to partner those individuals with the people who already have the skills, to work with them closely. Now, it's a luxury because most people who work in the GBS or shared services environment don't have oodles of staff with extra capacity sitting around ready to have training hours available to them or for them. But it's making sure that you have the right partnerships between the right colleagues. So one is learning, and one is also helping you avert some risks in terms of key person risk. It helps in that area to spread the load of the knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I think partnering people with the key people within the organization can add so much in terms of mentoring, in terms of finding people with the right dynamics, with the right skills that can complement each other, and help each other grow. And I even did a podcast last year with a gentleman from uh, NBC Universal, and he talked about reverse mentoring, where actually, as a leader, he had
Mhm.
someone that had just started in the organization come and say his experience, and what he felt like, how they could improve as a manager, which is a really humble thing to do, and a great initiative to try. Um, Connor, on your front, how do you feel like people can go about upskilling and strengthening their talent pool? What's the most effective ways to do that?
And first of all, Nadia's spot on again, which is that having that personal connection or just being able to talk to someone who has been there before or has had success is really important. Having someone who you can see as a mentor or a guide or that you can ask questions is incredibly important. Broad strokes, how we try to help our customers think about upskilling is intentionally and transparently. One of the first questions we tend to ask is, well, where do you want the business to be? Where are you trying to go with your business? And then what role do your people play in that? I mean, we were just talking actually a little bit before that if people are our most valuable asset, we need to treat them as such. So how do we bring them along in the journey? We had one of our customers who had a team of digital signal processing engineers. And that part of the business was slowly becoming less and less relevant, less and less important. But they took a step back and they realized that this other part of the business they really needed and they could not find enough people was data scientists. And these digital signal processing engineers were like 70 or 80% of the way there when they looked at their skills and their aptitudes and what was required of the role to being data scientists. So transparently, they essentially went to the team and said, hey, let's work on upskilling plans for you. Let's figure out how we can get you into this role because we need people over here. So they transitioned almost all of the team to becoming data scientists. And obviously, that's a boom for the business. Attrition is expensive. Finding people outside of your business is expensive. But then also there was an intentional and transparent way they went about it with that team of, it's a mouthful, digital signal processing engineers to get them over to a more valuable part of the business. So intentionally and transparently is how we tend to think about upskilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these are career paths that wouldn't have been available within shared services even 5 years ago. So it's interesting to see what kind of new jobs, new roles, new career paths are now becoming available. So let's move on to our next question. And maybe, Connor, we could start with you. I want to know, where do we find untapped sources of talent?
The simple answer is, well, they're all around us. It's a kind of glib, but it's true. And I think one of the reasons it's kind of hard to see is that when we think about, I'll speak from my own perspective. When I think about the talent that I might want to see at my company, I come into it with inherent biases because it's how I see the talent. Maybe if I'm looking for people to join my team, I probably want to see people who do the job like me or were successful in ways that made me successful. So I'm looking, whether I realize it or not, to find other people who are like me. But that's not necessarily what makes the most successful person in product marketing or at Eightfold. So understanding what skills or requirements, or as Nadia was mentioning, aptitudes or soft skills that make someone successful, and evaluating really more so based on the data than my own preconceived notions, help us to realize that there are lots of people out there who might be really good at this job. And that previous example of digital signal processing engineers into data scientists is perfect here. That customer didn't realize that until they looked at the data and realized they had a whole bunch of folks over here in the business that would make a great data scientist, which is something they really, really needed. So they're all around us. We just have to know how to look for them and what kind of skills and skill sets and transferable skills and potential that we need so that we can find people the roles that are going to be most useful for them.
Fantastic. Anything to add on that, Nadia, or should we move on to the next question?
I think what I found worked really well recently is referrals. People within your own network. I mean, we're doing a lot more using the tool of LinkedIn and the community that it is. But I've hired a lot of people through referral recently, and they've been good hires. So I think always remember that that's a great option.
And does that extend to like boomerang employees, people that have previously worked at the company that you might want to get back? Do you find that they're a
Um,
useful source of talent?
I'm probably the not a great example to ask this because I move organisations probably every 2 to 5 years, and there's a reason for that. So my skills are relevant in different businesses at different times. Um, so I haven't had the let's say I haven't seen boomerang employees, but what I have seen is I've seen employees move with colleagues because
Mm,
they know how to work well together. Their skill set complements each other, and typically what you're doing within this industry is pretty similar, industry to industry, company to company. So I've seen a lot of 2, 3 people move together.
yeah. Oh, people are always coming back at SSON. They think they can do better, but they can't. Yeah. Better the devil you know, I think, sometimes. So let's look at kind of our next question, which is about a topic that's, very, very important to a lot of people, and that's how we can ensure our talent pool is diverse and inclusive. Let's start with you, Nadia. How do we look at that?
um it goes back to, if you're looking at people for the right skills and the aptitude, always be conscious not to necessarily hire in your own image. This massive thing, right? um Also, many of us will have shared service hubs which are around the world. So that does mean that of any part of many organizations, we actually just by default have really diverse teams. I've been in global roles for a long time now, and I've had teams in all 5 continents. They are by nature diverse by gender, ethnicity, race, sexuality, religion. And that means that as a leader, I have to build in practices, ways of working, processes that lend themselves well to inclusivity. Um, I think if you're in this space and you're a leader of note, being inclusive is part of your DNA. It's almost something that you don't talk about because it's what you do every single day, because you have to maintain smooth operations in your teams.
Brilliant. Yeah. And what about kind of a tech perspective, Connor? Like, how does AI contribute to that goal?
Well, I think some of my answers have kind of hinted at this, but ultimately it can help widen the aperture for what you might. I mean, Nadia was again saying it where people have a bad habit, and I was kind of talking about it myself of hiring in their own image, right? Like I am more comfortable with what a background is that looks like mine, or I think is what success looks like in my role. And what AI can help you do is identify the actual data or metrics that are truly successful in that role, or things you might not have realized might be a really good indicator for success in a particular role. We use our own products at Eightfold, and we had a few years back a really interesting insight come to us, which is that we hire a lot of what we call SDRs, or sales development representatives. These are our entry-level sales teams who are a really important part of the sales process. We're oftentimes the first touch for many of our prospects or customers. And generally the wisdom is you want these people to have previous sales experience. Maybe that's working the floor for retail or something along those lines, or a best case scenario, they've done this job before at another tech company. That's not necessarily a bad indicator for success, but what we found was actually for us, one of the best indicators for success was that these folks worked as a coach or a teacher or in education before. Being an AI product, it's not necessarily the most straightforward thing to explain to someone. So our SDRs have to do a little bit of educating with our customers. So the SDRs that got promoted, that stayed the longest, that hit their numbers, there was a really high correlation between them having previous coaching or teaching experience. And that was something we didn't consider. In fact, maybe we subconsciously weren't looking at people who didn't have sales experience, because again, the traditional wisdom is if you're going to do sales, you probably should have done it in some way, shape, or form beforehand. turns out, like I said, the best indicator was that they were some kind of an educator, teacher, coach in some way, shape, or form. And that was something we didn't really realize, but our own product helped us realize that. So it was a really cool little moment for us and a way of us kind of living our own mission. And it was, again, it was a cool realization. And we're something we still use to this day about who we think about and what kind of people we prioritize in hiring for that role.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, often you don't know what you don't know. And like when you start out from school and from uni and people say, what job do you want to do? What are you passionate about? And you really only know like a handful of jobs. Like I would never know like conference producer was a job, but now I do it for like 12 years and I'm like, oh, it's great. But like you wouldn't know. So I think like when people start down the career path, they often should be encouraged to pivot if they want to, or try new things, because they totally can be transferable. And sometimes you get looked over because you don't have that experience when really you're completely capable of doing something slightly different. So I think that's really cool to see that AI can help us in that way, because it's always a preconception that might encourage biases, but actually it can be used in completely the reverse. Let's have a look. We've got a couple more questions, guys, in our audience. Then I'd love to kind of go and ask you some questions, or have you ask our speakers questions. What are you facing? What are your problems when it comes to talent, recruitment, attrition? Please do ask our experts here and we'll endeavor to give you some answers. Well, the panelists will. I'll just ask the question. So let's look at older workers. I know that there is a growing, especially in the US, but also in Europe, a growing amount of older workers. And often these older workers are underutilized part of the workforce. How can we prevent bias against older workers and ensure they're fully utilized? Nadia, if I could ask you that question, if you have any perspective on that.
I think we need to define older workers. So I'm going to take a pun. I am Gen X, so I am currently considered an older worker. I'm still very much in the workforce. I still see myself as having a good 10 to 15 years left in the workforce. So that's one piece. I think the second piece is, for me, it's not about older workers. It's about, do you bring the right skills to work to do the job I need you to do? And if you do, I really don't care what age you are. And it's as simple as that for me.
Yeah, actually, totally. Oh, go ahead, Connor.
No, I was going to say, building on that logic, I think works exactly the same thing for younger workers. And I think sometimes younger workers maybe perhaps get that, if you want to say, privilege or treatment. Well, if you're 20 something and you can do the job, then maybe that's afforded to you. But ultimately, I think we all want to be put in positions where we can be productive, where we can do a good job. Nobody wants to be put in a spot where they're like, I'm being set up to fail. So putting someone on a project, staffing them on a role where it's about what they know or what they can do is what is most important. And some of the things that I've been talking about, potential adjacencies, learnability, that doesn't stop when someone turns 25, 30, 40, wherever the mark is for you in your head about younger workers versus older workers, that doesn't stop, right? Just having years of experience and work, and we're talking about the importance of mentorship at the top and the role that people can play in an organization, they can still move around and learn and work on other things as part of the organization. So it's, in my mind at least, it is about putting people in positions where they can be successful and using the skills and potential that they have to do so.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe the bias against older workers comes from people wanting to recruit someone that stays in the job all their career life, but that is not the reality now. And when we see from the SSON State of the Industry, and I mean, there's millions of surveys on this topic, but we see people that are staying in a job 3 to 5 years. So there is absolutely no difference between having a young person stay in the job 3 to 5 years or having someone with much more experience, an older worker, in inverted commas, doing the job for 3 to 5 years, just that the older person will bring more different diverse experience. So I think that, well, I hope that we'll see a cool shift in the demographic, and we can kind of come back next year and talk about if there's been any change. But I think it's a super interesting topic to look at. Let's go to look at our last couple of questions. And Nadia, let me go to you first. I want to know, how do you ensure your talent pool is fit not only for present requirements, but also for the future needs of your business?
That's more a question around stakeholder engagement and making sure that I know what my future requirements are for my business. Again, it depends on the business itself. So some businesses are really good at projection and laying out their thoughts for years out. Others don't have that foresight. So if you're fortunate enough to have a 3 to 5 year plan that some businesses do, that helps you with your plan. You have to mirror that with your tech plan, with your capacity plan, your capability plan. That's fine. For businesses that don't, and it's more reactionary, I think as a leader, you have to be really able to pivot very quickly, be really clear about the type of work that you will stop doing, the type of work that can be, you're in control of, so you can drive the timelines so that you can create capacity if those demands come in and require time from your team. And lastly, I would say we need to be great negotiators as leaders of shared services and GBS. So if there is a demand and I genuinely see that the resources I have can't meet that demand, I need to get extra resource. And sometimes it is very much just about that, is not squeezing the team that I have, but expanding the team that I have, making it the right size for the task at hand.
Yeah, totally. Great advice. And Connor, same question to you on that front. How do you ensure your talent pool is fit not only for present requirements, but also for the future needs of the business?
The risk of being an echo for Nadia here, it's about where do you want to go? Where do you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? It's very hard to plan for the future if you don't know where you're going. I mean, there's a famous quote out there. It's if you don't know where you're going, any direction will get you there. So if you have a direction, you can start to plan for that. Now, granted, as Nadia was mentioning, not every business is sophisticated enough, has the luxury, has the time to be able to plan that far in advance. So again, at the risk of being an echo, it's about understanding your team and their capabilities today and the skill sets they have today. And frankly, being able to project out. If there's a change in the business, you need to be agile, you need to bend, you need to be flexible to understand what we're capable of today, or maybe even perhaps how long it will take us to get to the state the business needs us to get to. So these are difficult questions. This is a tough one, especially if you're starting from a place of, well, we don't necessarily have a great top-down plan where we want to go in 2 to 5 years. So it makes it harder for us to figure out how we need to hire, or how we need to staff, or upskill, or mentor, or learn, or whatever that looks like. And it becomes more reactionary, and reactionary is hard. Reactionary isn't always fun. So having a chance to be more proactive is key. But again, understanding that not everybody has that. So being able to be as agile as possible is most important there.
Agile in terms of like being able to recruit people quickly, or like being able to shift skills around in your own organization. Is that the kind of thing you mean?
Just, yeah, I mean, it comes back to a build, buy, borrow, bot strategy, right? Like this is where a contingent workforce comes in. If we don't have the workers on our team today, as Nadia was saying, well, we can either go hire them. That can take a while. That can be very expensive. Or is this a particular skill set or future vision that maybe we hire some contingent workers or contract workers who can help us fill a gap while we upskill our internal folks, which might be a cheaper alternative, but also benefits our internal workers as well. But we need someone today. So this becomes part of the, again, build, buy, borrow, bot. Are there certain roles, or I shouldn't say roles, are there certain capabilities or needs that we can automate that then can free up our folks to spend more time upskilling or looking for new teammates or whatever that looks like? So it has to be part of a holistic talent strategy.
Yeah, understand. And then our last question, and Nadia, I'll ask you this one. With many GBS leaders coming up to retirement age, how do we ensure the next generation of leadership is fit for purpose?
So I think that's a great question. One of the things I'm personally involved in is an organization that launched in November. I'm a co-founder of a business called Conduto. And what Conduto is deliberately doing is trying to mentor and strengthen the pipeline of the next, let's say, round tranche of leaders, specifically women. So it is targeted at women. It is a global initiative. But we need to start really training, advising, and letting people see what we've seen in the context of the new technologies, the new thinking, the new scope, because I think the scope of GBS and shared services is broadening and deepening. We have an obligation of leaders to help in that area. I think the other thing is teasing out people who are genuinely interested in shared services and GBS. You don't wake up in the morning, like you say, you don't know that this thing exists. You have no idea. But there are some people who you work with who come into the world, and they're maybe not sure of where their career path is. And it's just giving them the reassurance and showing them that the leadership roles do exist. And what comes with that, because they're not easy roles, but what comes with that, and making sure that they're aware that it's a valid choice and it's a good choice to make.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. So yeah, we'll go into question time with the audience now. So if the audience have questions, please pop them into the attendee chat and we'll take a few of those. And while we're doing that, just let's have a look at our polls. So we asked, are you seeing compensation ranges rise within your shared service? And 64% said yes. 35% said it's staying static, and no one said they're reducing. So it's good news for everyone that's looking to buy a house and working in shared services. So yeah, that's, I mean, not as good news for the companies, but great news for the employees. Does that reflect what you see, Nadia, in the market and in your industry?
I see in the market that the talent is asking for more money, which I think is great and absolutely right. Where I find it's more difficult is businesses actually don't recognize that the talent need to be paid on different pay scales. That's still a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, totally. And if I think, as you say, like the leadership is a bit older, they don't realize that house prices have gone up by 10 times, but salaries haven't. So there's such a cost of living that you need to meet, and it goes up so quickly. It's difficult to recognize that in your head. But anyway, enough of my problems. Let's go on to our Q&A. So Deepak has asked, can you share some good retention strategies for key talent? Maybe Nadia, you could start with that one.
Ask them what they want. I think sometimes we make the assumption it's about X amount of money. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you can meet their requirement. Sometimes it's, will you sponsor me to do X course? Fine. If it means, you're not going to sponsor them to do knitting, but if it's relevant to the job and the organization, then fine. I think we spend too much time worrying about what we think is helpful to the employee rather than asking them directly. I think the other thing is, when we talk about retention, we need to be realistic. Unless there's a career path that people are really clear on, my philosophy is if somebody stays in role within the service centre for 2 years, that's a great innings. If they move to another role within the service centre, or I'm able to promote them, bonus. If they stay 5 years or more, supermax. So we just need to be realistic. I don't want to stay in the same job doing the same thing. A lot of what we do is repetitive and cyclical anyway. We just need to be realistic about how long people should be and will remain motivated in a role, which ties itself to the retention conversation.
And I think building off that, providing a certain amount of transparency into how you can move around an organization. What are the types of projects that are out there you might be able to raise your hand for and say, I'd love to work on that. I have an aspiration to move to this part of the business. I think is really key, because otherwise we were talking about how would you necessarily, you don't wake up in the morning and when you're 18 and go, I want to be in GBS. You find your way into that. You learn about it. So having that opportunity in an organization to see what other opportunities are out there for you helps you stay. You have an understanding of how to build your career at a particular organization or find the opportunities that might fit. And I feel like worst case scenario, someone leaves and it turns out they would have been a great fit for another role at the organization or project, but they just didn't know.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a big conversation about branding or rebranding and communications about what GBS now is, because I think a lot of people have preconception that
Mm.
GBS or shared services is being a accounts payable clerk or processing or data entry, but there's so many different jobs available within shared services now. Digital transformation, data analysts, communications, even ESG is becoming a bigger topic. So, letting people know that is absolutely vital in your retention strategy. Another question that's come through, and I'll go to you, Connor, is on the data within HR. So, when we're deploying AI solutions, how should we manage the data? How can we manage the data risk?
Big question. Generally, what we advise is to always make sure if your vendors are starting to deal with AI, that they've passed their bias audits, their equal opportunity algorithms that you can ask your vendors about. Never be afraid of a security review. Like these are all things that should be par for the course for anybody who's working in AI. So basically, don't be afraid to put them to the test. If they're a seasoned AI vendor, this is nothing new. They've helped pass different compliance departments against security reviews, all of that. So don't be afraid to ask for someone's credentials and make sure you feel ultimately really comfortable in working with them because it's a new space. You shouldn't necessarily feel naturally comfortable, especially with all the attention given to AI and with your own data. So ask the questions, get to a point where you feel very comfortable and make sure you understand how your data is going to be used and how the organization you're working with can ultimately make sure that you're compliant and then nothing goes wrong.
Absolutely. Another question that's come through is on the employee value proposition, which I know a lot of shared service are working on changing or reviewing. Nadia, what do you think are the most important things in an employee value proposition? Is there anything that shared service should be looking at to improve theirs or kind of key points to include?
Transparency, honesty, and living those values. Collaboration, and I would put in there influence. So many people who work in on this side of the house feel that they have to be instruction led by the business or by leadership, and actually they have some of the most innovative ideas ever. So for me, the EVP is to talk to people who are attracted to or within the team about the fact that we want to hear about their innovations. It's not only about what leadership think or what leadership say. We want the co-creation really to come from them. Those are things that I found have worked well in the teams that I've led.
So ensuring that they're being listened to and part of
Yeah,
the collaboration,
yeah,
the powers of creation.
that's right. Yes.
Understand. And what about for you, Connor? What do you feel like are the most important parts of the employee value proposition, and has it changed recently?
You've heard me go on and on about transparency. And I think, like I said, I feel like I just keep frankly echoing a lot of what Nadia said. So maybe I know it's great to have everybody share the leading of the questions, but you're putting me on my back foot. No, I'm just kidding. But no, transparency is really important. I think that extends beyond shared services into any organization and how you think about making everybody feel like they have a place, right? So I think that's ultimately, I'm not going to drone on and on because I think Nadia nailed it, but that transparency I think is just ultimately really key. And it's what people are starting to ask more and more for and value for as an employee.
Brilliant. Sadly, that's all we've got time for because I could talk to you about this topic all day. But yes, thank you so much to Nadia and to Connor for taking the time to put together your thoughts and deliver them today. We so appreciate it. And I know we're going to be back, Connor, for our third webinar in a couple of months on another really exciting topic within HR. So please do look out for that, guys, on the SSOM portal. We'll be publishing details of that very soon. And thank you to everyone that attended. I have recorded this session, so if you want to watch again on demand, if you want to share with your colleagues, please do so. It will be available by probably 2 hours time from now. It will be up there and on demand. So thanks once again, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.